So I'm joined by a very dear friend of mine, Karen Harrison-Denning, who is Head of Research and Publication with DementiaUK. Now, very funnily, Karen and I met on a train, and I think that was about a year ago, year and a half.
It's a good 4 years ago.
Is it? Oh, okay. And can you remember how that happened, how we struck up a conversation?
I remember you getting on at Peterborough on the East Coast Line, and we just struck up a conversation, largely because you took off this amazingly rustic looking woolly hat, and there was this amazingly beautiful person underneath with style. And I think also I was reading something that had a Dementia UK logo on, and you sort of noticed that.
Because of my dad, fundamentally.
So it turned out.
Yes.
So it turned
and so
out.
that conversation struck then. And when we launched the Nourish afternoon tea about a year ago, very sadly or inconveniently for you, you were on your way to India.
Oh, I'm really sorry. Sorry to have missed it, but yes, India was calling. Valentine's Day.
Valentine's
and I missed
Day.
it.
Yes, but we're going to be holding other Nourish afternoon teas this year, so we'll definitely get you along for one of those, if not more. But how did your interest in the whole area of supporting people living with dementia strike up? Where does that come from for you?
Well, largely, I'm a nurse by background. I'm a reluctant nurse. It wasn't something I planned to go into, so I dabbled across mental health, learning disabilities, general nursing, looking for an area that I wanted to work in. And really, I suppose I chose dementia because it was not seen as sexy. It was not seen as a prestigious field to work in. And indeed, if nurses had not performed well in other areas, they were sent to work in dementia care, and I just felt this was an absolute injustice. And I chose really from the early 80s to work in the field of dementia care, and worked in very many different settings since then.
And with Admiral Nurses, I forget how long Admiral Nurses have been going. Is it about 20 years?
Yeah, about 21 years now. And largely it was born out of a London family's experiences of, they were quite a wealthy family, so they could afford to supplement the care for their father financially, but there was very little available then for families, the family members who were actually caring for people. So piloted the model of Admiral Nursing.
And now there are 180, are there, in the country?
Catch up, Jane. We're nearing 240.
Phenomenal,
It's
fantastic.
amazing success over the last couple of years.
I was going to say that's over the last couple of years, it's gone up from that.
Mm.
So Admiral Nurses are specialist nurses that are trained in the whole area of supporting someone living with dementia and the people who are caring for them.
Yes, they're registered nurses by background that have specialised since qualifying in working with the whole family affected by dementia. So not just the person with dementia, but the whole family, and however many family members come with that person. So,
And where's the ambition for Admiral Nurses?
our ambition is to have the access, anybody that requires an Admiral nurse should have access to one. So we're actually targeting areas across the country that we see as black spots where there are none. And we're now in a very good position where we can actually support new services developing by priming them for a period of time.
So one area that we've been talking about over the last couple of years, it seems, but really it'll be a great opportunity now, is to talk about the whole area from my passion, looking after people and families living with dementia. Up until now, nothing has ever been done and said about food in any way that entices or empowers or titillates the taste buds of people living with dementia, because I think there's a whole education piece that needs to be really brought up to the public, into the public eye, about the fact that someone that lives with dementia can often have many challenges, such as swallowing, which everyone just presumes is an inevitable consequence of living with dementia, and it shouldn't be. Yes, it can be a consequence, but the suffering that someone undergoes or experiences can be greatly alleviated by working with a family and educating them and Admiral Nurses about how you can support someone in that setting.
We have a telephone helpline, and one of the most frequent themes that comes from telephone conversations about nutrition and hydration. Because you talk about the sort of the reduced quality or the suffering of the person with dementia in respect to food and nutrition, but family carers, it's a very emotive subject, and they don't know what to do for the best. Particularly when health services or the sort of more biomedical approach is about managing risk. So reducing any food intakes to sometimes the worst liquidized brown slurry that you could possibly imagine, and then wonder why they get food refusal behaviours. So it's quite an emotive subject area for families.
And also I think a piece that we need to work on, and it'll be lovely to do it this year, is about the whole element that it doesn't need to be expensive and it doesn't need to be complicated for someone who is caring for someone living with dementia to know a few simple things that they can not only help to look after the person with dementia but look after themselves.
Absolutely.
So it's a dish that they can cook. So whether it's a really simple souffle or a lovely soup that's enriched, that has more of the protein and the calories in it, that for someone perhaps who is with the dementia, is struggling with their appetite, they're needing to make sure that every mouthful is really calorie rich. But how do you inspire and inform the person who's caring to realise that it's not going to stretch their budget, it's not going to put them under more financial pressure, and it's those simple tips that we can help educate through animal nurses and through the information that we put out together, which I think is really exciting.
It has potential power. One of the biggest issues in caring for a person with dementia is in empowering them and giving them confidence to care. And the system at the moment makes them feel almost frightened to deal with anything around food and supporting eating because of the risk of inhaling or whatever. So the more we can empower families to make those decisions and produce foods that are not just nutritious but attractive. The research, particularly in hospitals, focuses on the behaviours of the person with dementia around refusing food. And it sort of takes the locus of control away, and it implies that the person's deviant in their behaviour because they're refusing food. But if you're presented with some of the disgusting discoloured messes that people with dementia are faced with, simply because we're not prepared to take risks or invest in just thinking outside of the box, really, because as you say, it's not always an expensive option. It's just a creative option.
Yes, absolutely, and it just takes that imagination and also courage, as you say, to step out of the box and step out from the norm, because what I find particularly shocking is what's being taught now is no different to what was being taught 25 years ago, and yet the world has moved on and the food culture has moved on, and we showed with the Jamie Oliver campaign is that so much more can be done when you inform individuals and you inform caring relatives, not just sitting on a government board and just making a recommendation. We need to get the individual person out there to believe that there can be something that they can do, if only they have the courage and the information to actually just follow those simple steps and empowering them, as you say. So one of the things we're going to be doing is through the Nourish afternoon teas is creating simple recipes, doing the masterclass with Andreas, our lovely chef, and with Claire, and doing that and filming it so that people can download the podcast or the video so they can watch it in their own home at a time that suits them. Because of course the practicality of coming to workshops or any group meeting,
It's always a problem.
It's always a problem.
Caring for somebody with dementia.
It is. So if we can produce those digital sound bites that they can then in their own time use to inform themselves, but equally involve the person living with dementia in some of that process and some of that cooking, because cooking can be a lovely way of breaking down barriers, reducing stress.
And in that sort of context is about strengthening the relationship. Because a lot of, particularly spouses, in a situation where one person has dementia and the other is the carer, you need any sort of intervention and activities that can actually strengthen the relationship. So if you can do that through very simple culinary exercises or developing a recipe, all the
making
better.
or making a loaf of bread,
All
and
the
it's that
better.
kneading and that relaxation element, which they found in research produces all the happy hormones, and that I certainly find for my dad, if cooking or he loves making his bread, and it's his thing that he has to do twice a week, and he follows his simple recipe, and that's something he takes control of. And so for him, that's his part of his role, is being my dad, is making the bread. But we know that that's a process he loves, and he relaxes when he does it and feels really proud when he's done it. So if you can combine those elements within a workshop or a digital little video, I think that's what's really...
Absolutely. I think food is incredibly important, more important than we actually give credence to, really. So why should that be any different as a person ages or as a person develops dementia? In fact, it should be more important.
Absolutely. So in all those areas that we've just talked about, I think really bringing it to life this next year, through the Nourish afternoon teas rolling throughout the country, and the on-bed gardens, and having static Nourish afternoon teas that people living with dementia can come along and be supported and have a beautiful moment. That's going to be really exciting to bring all of that to life.
Well, I'm certainly excited.
So thank you ever so much.
Welcome.